Join me, Harriet Gould, for the Lab Matters podcast to hear fascinating stories every week from the inspiring people behind the science. In this episode of Lab Matters with me, Harriet Gould, Martin Johnson, co-founder and director of Ecodiversity, speaks about coral breeding, carbon sinks, and choosing which trees to plant at home. Today, I am joined by Martin Johnson, co-founder and director of Ecodiversity. That's a consultancy firm. Is that right? Is that right, Martin?
I suppose it is.
Right.
That's about right. Yes, we
And
more do stuff than advise other people what to do, which is what you might imagine consultants do. But yeah,
yes, you're right. That's true. Well, good. There's lots to talk about then. Now I'm speaking to you in Ireland at the moment. You're sitting on the porch of your yurt, which isn't a usual scenario as far, well, for me at least. Normally people are in offices and houses, not yurt porches. So that's fun. You'll get a chance to explain why you're sitting there. Um, but before we come on to any of that, let's do the chronological thing and go right back to where it all started, and what brought you into the scientific sphere in the first place.
sure. So I suppose I always had um, a love for the outdoors and the environment, and I excelled at maths and physics and chemistry at school. So it was an obvious sort of progression, and I actually started doing a chemistry degree. And it sort of uh, got by in my first year on my A-level knowledge, and then instead of revising for my Christmas exams in my second year, I was distracted by reading The Gaia Hypothesis by James Lovelock and getting kind of deep into Earth system science. So I failed my second year chemistry exams, realized I was probably doing the wrong degree. And so I changed course and went to study environmental sciences at the University of East Anglia, which is one of the sort of original and world-leading environmental science departments. So specialised in geochemistry and earth system science there. Went on to do a PhD, and then postdoc and the usual trajectory then, I suppose, for a while.
Which university did you drop out of?
University of York.
Right, okay. Did you like it
Um,
there? Was it, I mean, York, what was the science culture like in York?
um, yeah, it was good. It was great. I mean, it was a very traditional chemistry department. I mean, so kind of old school that you could still smoke in the lecture theatre when I started there in 1994, five. So I mean,
Crikey.
and it was lots of sort of old science lecturers putting up overheads and reading them very dryly or scribbling equations on the board that nobody could keep up with and that sort of thing. So it was very sink or swim, I think, that kind of that old science culture. Um, which is fine. I mean, that works in some ways because you if you're training academics, then the best ones kind of get through and excel. But universities have changed a bit these days, having been a lecturer for quite a long time. And now the students are the clients, and you have to do your best to help them all along. And that is actually a really good thing because people invest a lot of time and money in a university degree, and they deserve to get the best out of it and to be helped as much as possible.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
But it
wonder if
wasn't it wasn't the teaching that let me down. It was my disinterest in in the
I was
stuff
going
I
to
was
say,
being taught.
I wonder if it helps to have a vision when you actually go into your college course in the first place. If you have a real vision about what you want to achieve as the outcome of obtaining that degree and that education and those learnings, then it surely must inspire you in a different way than just going there just because it's the thing to do.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And I thought I was interested in. Well, no, I was interested in chemistry, but I was interested in chemistry applied to the natural environment. And by the end of year two, we hadn't really seen anything to do with atmospheric chemistry or ocean chemistry or anything like that. We were still on the going really deep on the theory. So it was Joe. It was a great grounding. It was a
Hmm.
great grounding, but I was glad to move on to some applied things.
And was it hard I mean, when you found the degree at the UEA, the environmental sciences? degree course? Was it hard to apply and to get accepted? How did that pan out?
Um, no, it was actually fine. They were very happy to take me on to the second year on the basis of the kind of knowledge and background and an interview. So, yeah, no, it was a pretty smooth process. I think when you're transferring between courses, you're sort of outside of the UCAS system, or at least you were at that time. So, had to apply through UCAS with all of the, having
Mm,
offers and then getting your results and all of that business. But no, just to transfer between degree courses at that time was just a letter to the local authority. So they transferred your grant over, and that was that.
that's simple. Good.
Yeah.
And then you went on to get your PhD. Had you already said that? You got a
Yeah.
PhD. So environmental sciences degree and then PhD in marine biogeochemistry.
Yes. So
Tell me about
biogeochemistry
yeah.
is it's the study of how biology and physics and chemistry interact to make the world what it is, I suppose. So everything from the state of the ocean and the state of the atmosphere to how plants interact with soils, and it's that integrated sort of big picture. You might call it Earth system science, I suppose, if you're looking at it holistically. But if you're looking at some specific part of it, like you obviously are in a PhD, you go very deep on one very particular topic, then yeah, you'd call it biogeochemistry, I suppose. And specifically, I was looking at how ammonia, which is a gas, exchanges between the atmosphere and the ocean, and trying to quantify that by going out on ships and measuring it in both the atmosphere and the ocean, and then inferring whether it was likely to be going in or coming out, and maybe trying to figure out the rate at which it was either coming in or going out. But that's there's a lot of assumptions kind of in that next stage. But actually, we didn't know at the time what the direction was of that flux. So um,
And do we know now?
mm, we got a better idea. Yeah, not solely as a result of my PhD, I hasten to add, but yeah, it's a question that people are interested in because ammonia is important in atmospheric chemistry, but also there's quite a strong anthropogenic source from the land. So in lots of places near to land, it's probably going in to the ocean from the atmosphere. It's an input of anthropogenic nitrogen, which is driving phytoplankton growth, potentially community change. So you might have different phytoplankton of different sizes if you change the amount of nitrogen in the surface ocean, and that might affect how much carbon is being exported to the deep ocean, or sort of changes to the functioning of the system. So
And
one of many
what are
one
the
of many
things that are
species.
what are the things that affect the levels?
Um,
The main things, I guess.
yeah, so in terms of anthropogenic sources, you're mostly looking at um, pigs and cows. Very strong source. There's some industrial sources, and then there are strong natural sources like seabird colonies are a huge source of ammonia to the atmosphere, kind of locally. If you look at the global budget, they're quite small, but locally they can be really important. So you can have, higher, more productive seas around seabird colonies because of all of the ammonia that their poo releases and that then ends up in the ocean.
Hmm. It's interesting, isn't it, that such impact comes from just a natural space. Probably everyone probably already knows that, but it's quite interesting to me at least anyway.
Mm.
Um, so after you'd done your PhD, in you went down the academic route and stayed as a postdoc.
Yep, I postdoced for 10 or so years on various projects. Some well, I guess there was a big variation, which was great because I got to see lots of different bits of science. So some observational stuff, sort of marine classic oceanography, going out on ships and measuring things and looking at sort of detailed process studies in the ocean and quantifying rates of different things, and then others which were model based and looking at long-term climate change and the effects of plants on the Earth's surface, changing weathering rates and leading to changes in atmospheric CO2 on long time scales and glacial cycles and things like that. So,
Hmm. And then you actually went into the academic teaching
uh,
arena.
Well, yes. So I eventually got a lectureship, and so that's a permanent position. So yes, there was teaching, but also, I mean, it was a very research focused department. So yeah, there was a lot of research, or a lot of managing research, I suppose. At that level, you're getting PhD students and postdocs, and getting them to do the work, and you're involved, but you're mostly sort of writing the proposals and managing the budgets and guiding and what have you, rather than actually at the coalface. But yeah, and then teaching and the other sort of responsibilities, so university management and all of that, all of that stuff along with it.
And how did you find that compared to doing the research work as a postdoc? Did you miss being out in the field?
Definitely, um, but it was exciting, I suppose, to be involved at the next level up, and getting to direct things at a slightly higher level. So yeah, no, I found it a generally positive experience, although at the time, and I suppose more so now, universities are under a huge amount of financial pressure and pressure to to do more with less and to deliver on more fronts. So a big thing that was developing while I was an academic was the agenda around impact and making a difference with research, which at the time I'd say there was a lot of resistance to from a lot of academics. Because,
I mean,
we do research.
was it quantified that making a difference with research? Because educating people, I think, makes a great difference. The ultimate.
Mm, yes, no. So it's separate from that. So it's really about um, you know, bang for your research buck. So if well, most of the research in the department I worked in was from the Natural Environment Research Council. They were having a particularly difficult time with this to demonstrate how the money they spent resulted in some kind of change or improvement to people's lives. Um, and so there was a big challenge there to demonstrate the value, but also to design projects that delivered the answers to questions that were, pressing for society and for policymakers.
Mm,
Um,
that's very interesting because I would have thought the advanced education piece would service that requirement quite satisfactorily.
yeah, no, it's. I mean, I think it's a bigger thing now, or maybe it's changed. Maybe now most of the research that is funded is is funded directly to answer important questions. So it's become fully integrated into a lot of the science that's done, I think, now. When you write the proposal, you're saying, here's a societally important question that we're going to provide part of the answer to.
Mm.
Um, but yes, we did a lot of.
Do you have much input? Sorry to interrupt. Do you have much
No,
input
fine.
in saying what those important questions are, or are they
Um,
predetermined
Probably
elsewhere?
more so now. I think as an academic, you just sort of have to find out what they are, and then and then write to those questions. Although we started an initiative when I was a lecturer at UEA called the Marine Knowledge Exchange Network, which was in those early, there was some early funding to develop impact in environmental research. And so we got some of that to start this initiative where we um, intentionally brought together policymakers, mostly local to East Anglia, where the university is, but also more broadly, and practitioners and scientists and industry to look at how the research that was already done and the research that was going to be done could be used to better effect to, you know, create jobs, inform policy, improve livelihoods. In I suppose it was mostly focused on the East Anglian coastal region, although we weren't that sort of emerged from it. That wasn't specifically the intention at first, but that was an area where we found there was some good opportunity. So we found that by bringing a wide range of people together in the room and talking about the science that was being done and the needs of the potential research users, we were able to build really powerful networks that, you know, would help design future projects and make the most of existing ones. I heard somebody describe it the other day as weaving people, which I thought was really lovely.
Great phrase.
Um,
Great phrase.
Great phrase. But actually, I think it's quite correct because those groups that we set up in the during the course of that project over 3 or 4 years in the 2010s largely are still interacting and working together and doing stuff. So there are projects that spun out of that initiative that are ongoing, and those groups are still active. And so the sort of the the resilience of that community in East Anglia, the sort of practitioners and the researchers and the businesses there is strong because of it. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a positive story.
Weaving people, spinning out fabric of society. It all
Yeah,
works together. I like it. It sounds like you set up something quite brilliant, in fact. Um, so I'm glad that that sustains. Um, you've written a number of peer-reviewed publications, um, more than 40, it says here.
it's true.
You got a favorite one?
Ooh, that's a
What a rotten
question.
question.
That is a rotten question. Um, ooh. No, I don't think I do. I have to say,
What was your first?
so the first was one of two out of my PhD, which was looking at how um, back to ammonia in the ocean, it's actually mostly in the form of ammonium, so it protonates, so it gains an H plus and becomes NH4 um, at the pH of seawater, and it's a nutrient for phytoplankton for the plants in the ocean. And so it was a paper about understanding the dynamics of that. We just happened to, over quite a large area, sort of between Shetlands and Iceland and the Faroes and that bit of the North Atlantic, happened to capture the end of the spring bloom. So in the spring, there's lots of nutrients, and as the light levels increase and the stratification of the ocean becomes more strong, so phytoplankton cells are trapped in the surface layer, then they can grow quickly, and you have this thing called the spring bloom. And one of the first types of phytoplankton to grow are diatoms, which are kind of big ones that can grow quickly on the available nutrients. And we saw that we were able to see, across the whole of that region, um, the bloom decline through time, but also through space. So we had to figure out at each point that we went to what the state of the bloom was, but then we were able to relate that to increasing ammonium concentrations as the diatoms died off. So we're able to sort of link at quite a large scale, link the state of the system to the concentration of the ammonium, which was the thing I was interested in for my PhD. So that was quite cool.
When, sorry to be ignorant if this is an ignorant question, but when you say reduced through time and space, are you referring to area or a different iteration of space?
Yeah, no, aerially, yes. So,
Okay.
so because we were, when you're on a research cruise, you're kind of darting around to different places, potentially to do different things for different people who are on the ship. Or in this case, we were doing quite a detailed survey, and we're going north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south, at different longitudes. So the bloom starts and finishes earlier in the south than the north, and it also starts and finishes in earlier in different places because of the other local conditions. So we had to find a way of linking the state of the system at each point that we took samples to the state of the bloom. So it wasn't simply a time series. We had to sort of get the time series by looking at some proxies that gave us the state of the system, which is,
Understood.
I mean, that's kind of bread and butter for oceanography because nothing's ever simple in,
Yes,
in, out in the real world. So you've got to always find something that you can pin everything to make it all sort of make sense one way or
indeed.
another.
Indeed, indeed. Um, and you have got a couple of patents, no, three patents as well. Do you want to talk about
Uh,
those? So
sure. Yeah, I
uh,
could. Yeah, I can do a bit of an overview. So I do some work for a company that um, grows tropical coral for the orthopedics industry. So it's a startup in the west of Ireland, um, and I suppose I'm their science lead really. So I've got the brief for the overview of all of the science from the company. It's yeah, I can't talk too much about it, but it's a really, really cool innovation. So the coral is grown under controlled conditions in on land. It's tropical coral, but it's in the west of Ireland. And we have super controlled conditions which allow us to make really reproducible and different to naturally grown coral. And the skeleton of the coral is really, really great for repairing bone.
wow.
So we have some patents around how it's grown and about how the biomaterial is produced. So yeah, it's cool. It's really exciting stuff.
And for the future, design a coral for the future.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That does, I suppose that could be used if it's, but could that be used in dental work as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Dental trauma, potentially spinal repair, that kind of thing. So
Wow.
there's loads of applications, and what's available on the market at the moment isn't particularly great for various reasons, but it's either weak and crumbly or it's your own bone, so you've had to have some bone removed from somewhere else to be put in your body where it's needed, and so you have a kind of second, a morbidity at the donor site and potentially chronic pain and longer theatre times and things. So yes, hopefully we can solve those and yeah,
How
provide a
interesting.
sustainable solution.
Yes. Now then, I think we're up to about 2019. You've done an awful lot. You packed an awful lot in. And then in 2019, you left academia and you left the UK.
That's right.
And you and the family up sticks and relocated.
Yep. So we moved to pretty much the very bottom left-hand corner of Ireland. So in West Cork,
And
so
what made you
down.
choose that bit? And what, I mean, what inspired the move
Funnily
in the
enough,
first place?
well, I suppose the move was triggered ultimately by my wife's Irish, and I think Brexit was the final straw for her relationship with living in Britain. So it was time to leave and to move to Ireland, which had already had always been the plan, but it was always the 5 year plan that never quite happened, and that was the thing that spurred us on to do it. Um, Along with some sort of issues with work and career and you know working in a big institution for a long time, yeah, you increasingly become convinced that it would be good to have a change, and yeah, have been vindicated in that. So we decided it was the west coast of Ireland. We thought we were moving to sort of leave um, serious work. We bought an old tumble down farmhouse in a 20 acres, and the plan was to set up a campsite and live the good life. And for various reasons, it didn't quite work out that way, but it's worked out really well. We chose West Cork nerdily enough because the climate projections suggested it was probably going to be a pretty good place, over the coming decades in terms of weather and temperature and yeah, the conditions. So we thought it was a good bet. It's pretty windy. It is pretty windy.
Can
We knew
almost
that.
hear it slightly through
Yeah.
your microphone, through your headset.
Yes. And I'm outside. So we built a yurt, the alternative being a mobile home, and they were
But
just too horrible.
just
So we looked.
describe this yurt to me.
So it's in the corner of the field. It's 7 meters in diameter. It was made in Mongolia, and we brought it over via a guy in Spain who imports them. So it's painted with beautiful Mongolian patterns on the woodwork. And it has a sort of wooden structure and then sheep's wool insulation felt that came with it, designed for it. So about an inch of sheep's wool felt or possibly yak.
Mongolian
They,
sheep.
yeah, they said it was sheep, but it might be yak. Um, and then a canvas cover. But in between the canvas cover and the sheep sort, there is now multiple layers of roofing membrane to keep it dry. What Mongolians have plenty of wind, but they don't have a great deal of rain, and that's the big challenge in the Irish climate is being waterproof.
Indeed.
Um, and yes, so that's now our home office because we finished the house a few years ago, and so we work in the yurt. But it was raining really hard at the start of this call, so I came out onto the porch because the rain noise was too loud inside.
So you renovated the old farmhouse. You have 20 acres to tend to. Are you growing things in that acreage,
Um,
or have you got living
yes,
street
so we
farm
grow
life?
we have grown most of our own vegetables for the last few years. We're actually having a bit of a year off this year for various reasons, partly because the one of the polytunnels blew down in a storm over
Oh,
the winter, but also work has become really busy. But yeah, so I suppose we're really farming for nature. So in the fields, we are cutting for hay. Um, and just by cutting the hay and removing it, then you reduce the nutrient level, so the grasses do less well and the wildflowers do better. Um, and we've planted about 1,000 trees so far, but there's many more to be planted for sure. And we'll, I suppose we hope it'll be a bit of a demonstration of what you can do with a bit of space in terms of making it both productive in terms of food and firewood and resources, but also biodiverse.
mm.
Um,
And when it comes, I mean, this is probably a bit sort of my interest. When it comes to planting trees, that you've obviously got a great number of things to consider, like, what offers shade, what breaks wind, as it were. Um,
yeah,
and what the impact of how their roots grow has on how the land reacts to the rainfall and so on. So you've I assume given that a great deal of thought, and you've got a real structure behind it all.
yeah, yes, I think so. I mean, it's an ongoing process. So mostly at the moment, we've planted on the margins of the fields. So um, what's really noticeable is that where there is shelter, the trees will grow and make more shelter. So there's definitely a challenge of getting things established, and in some places that's been easier than others. But yes, really a focus on native trees and definitely the right tree in the right place, but also the trees that will prosper are probably the ones that are the right tree in the right place. So yeah, definitely a learning process.
Mm,
But it's nice to see, 7 years in, we've got some trees that are sort of 20 feet high already, and it's imperial units. Sorry,
satisfying.
five,
Fine. I
four or
can we
five
can
meters.
handle we can handle feet.
Oh, that's allowed now after Brexit.
I think it was allowed before.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, you're probably right.
So tell me, I mean, you were freelancing, but when you were while you were renovating the farmhouse and setting up the small holding,
Yeah,
but that's evolved.
that has evolved. So yeah, my partner Lisa and I both ended up doing sort of freelance work in marine and climate and environment stuff. Um, Sort of some project management sort of things, and also some technical work. And it just got to the point where we thought it was worth establishing a business, not only for financial reasons, but to be able to grow what we're doing and make it a bit more effective, and hopefully develop into a successful business that will allow us to bring on more people and build projects and build a bit of a critical mass for making positive change.
And
And
that's
I
ecodiversity.
and that's ecodiversity. So named because to solve the the many challenges that society faces, not all of which are environmental, but I would argue, there is interconnection between all of them. We need a diversity of ecology and economy. There's through diversity we build resilience, which is what society needs to weather the storm of the coming decades and centuries.
Indeed. And I think if you don't acknowledge the fact that there's the eco angle, it almost dehumanizes humans because we're biomatter as well and rely on it. So the interconnectivity is I think a lot closer to home than some people might acknowledge. And
I com I completely agree. I think it's a fundamental mindset change that needs to happen in society. That it's not humans and environment. We are
we are it,
we
like
are it, and
society.
it is us. And yes, we can't survive without a functioning planet. And we are one of the largest influences on its state at the moment. So we have to be conscious of that, and we have to find ways to live better, live within our means. Um, and I think a lot of the potential solutions also offer opportunities to make society more equal and fair at the same time.
Hmm. You've got a lot of work going on in Ecodiversity, the company. Um, Coordination of climate data and to feed into policy.
Yes, so one of the projects we're doing at the moment is working um, with the advisors to Irish government on climate targets and climate policy. So we are doing some of the data analysis and also coordinating the documents that are written that go to policymakers in Ireland. Um, I suppose one of the challenges with the work that we're doing for the public sector is that we're not really supposed to talk about it in any detail because it's a sort of I suppose they're sensitive matters for government and their advisors. So I'd love to go into more detail on that one, but I don't think I can.
Well, yeah, we're happy to know you're coordinating the effort.
Yes,
What
it's
can you
do you know what?
talk
It's
about?
it's important and fascinating work. I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose um, one of the
I
things
mean,
that
in
I'm
terms of some of the projects that you're working on at the
yeah,
moment. Yeah.
sure. So one of the things that I'm most deeply involved in at the moment is marine carbon dioxide removal, which is technologies to technologies or approaches to um, increase the sink of carbon of CO2 into the ocean one way or another. So there are lots of different ideas, and um, I should say I'm agnostic about it. I think there's some potential, but there are also risks. So a lot of the work that I'm doing on that is about sort of understanding which methods might be um, the safest to investigate, to pursue further. There are companies already active in the space trying to sell carbon credits on the basis of their actions. Some of them, I would say, more reputable and reliable than others. But there's a wide range of techniques from growing seaweed, which I might talk about a little more in a second. Seaweed is a plant; it needs CO2 to grow, so it grows very quickly, and it'll grow on all the excess nutrients that come down the rivers. So, um, great source of, or sorry, a great sink for CO2. But I suppose the question is, what do you do with the seaweed afterwards? And is the that's kind of the key point in terms of whether
Because
you're storing any carbon on a long time scale. So,
these days we eat it.
and if we eat it, then the CO2 ends up back in the atmosphere because we respire it, or the bacteria in our guts respire it, and so the CO2 is back in the atmosphere. So we haven't really, there's been no net gain there. So something that's commonly misunderstood is the need to look at, you have to look at the whole picture, otherwise you don't necessarily see it looks like a big impact when actually it's probably zero impact. So in the case of seaweed, if we want to have durable carbon storage, which is the term that the community is using at the moment, so that's storage over the time scale of centuries to millennia or longer. If it's seaweed, then we have to bury it somewhere. Should we put it in barrels at the bottom of mines or bury it in the deep ocean, which might store it for a thousand years? Which I suppose that's useful, but it may have an impact on the deep ocean. Or we biochar it and then do something with that, put it on fields. It might be useful as a source of nutrient and soil improver and lock carbon away for hundreds or thousands of years or maybe longer.
Could it
Um,
be like, I mean, how does a carbon sink in the sea compare to a carbon sink on land? Like, for example, peat.
um, so that depends where in the sea.
Hmm.
So if you grow seaweed and it stays in the surface ocean and it rots away, then the surface ocean is really, you can consider it sort of part of the atmosphere for the purposes of CO2 exchange. So over an annual or so timescale, the surface ocean is equilibrating with the atmosphere. So you've got to get it deep. And then if it's deep, it might be anoxic. If it's anoxic, then you're probably locking it away for a very long time. If you're um, rotting your seaweed down in an oxic region, then you're going to end up with CO2, and that's going to then float around in the bottom of the ocean, and eventually it will find its way back up and be in contact with the atmosphere and come out again. So that's probably on the time scale of centuries, maybe a bit longer. So that's useful, but there are probably ways that the ocean could store CO2 for much longer time scale. So if we add alkalinity to the ocean, so that might be sodium hydroxide or dissolving alkaline minerals like carbonates or silicates, then you increase the capacity of the ocean to hold CO2, to take up CO2. And that the residence time of alkalinity in the ocean is of the order of 100,000 years. So you can effectively increase the inventory of carbon in the ocean. And there's already absolutely stacks in there because there is a natural source of alkalinity from rocks weathering on land. It's one of the kind of fundamental controls on our climate at the moment. So there's a very big flow already and a very big store in the ocean. So we're maybe only tweaking it a little bit to make sort of climate relevant changes to the atmosphere. So that's quite an interesting
Hmm.
approach, but there are all kind of, there are second order effects or even first order effects that probably affect the efficiency and may affect the safety in terms the of the ecology of the ocean. So plenty of gotchas along the way, and there's lots of unanswered questions and lots of work that still needs to be done. And I suppose it's really important to recognize, we need climate solutions. We're not going to solve climate change just with emissions reduction at this point. Whether we like it or not, there is going to have to be some way of artificially removing CO2 from the atmosphere. And I suppose as a society, we have to A, kind of come to terms with that, B, accept that we're going to have to try a few different things. And there's probably not one solution, but we're going to have to try enough things that enough of them are going to work out. We also
Mm.
need to be able to have a way of stopping the ones that don't work or have unacceptable side effects. So there's lots of really interesting work to be done there.
I can imagine space rock playing a part in this along the line.
Yeah, okay, we capture some asteroids.
Yeah,
Why not?
why not? Why not?
I haven't heard about that one before.
No,
That's a good one.
I've just made it up. It's silly. Don't listen to
Actually, you were asking earlier about my favorite paper. There was a paper we wrote in response to somebody else's paper. They were a chemical engineer, interestingly, and they said, "Oh, how about this as a solution to global warming? We spread urea all over the land surface, and it'll react with CO2 in the atmosphere, and so well, yes, actually it'll break down and release ammonia, and that'll react with CO2 um, in the atmosphere. And on paper, you write down some equations, it looks good. In practice, to get enough ammonia into the atmosphere by doing that, you've basically killed all life on the land surface, and the ammonia that you need in the atmosphere, the concentration's so high after you've had enough to neutralize all of the sulfuric acid and the other acidic species in the atmosphere that you'd get to before CO2. The warming caused by the ammonia would be, many times that caused by the CO2. So we wrote a paper saying this probably isn't such a good idea, but there's actually a lot of fun kind of running through an extensive list of sort of doomsday scenarios if this is actually done. Um,
Well, I wonder if if included in that list was the side effect of actually having a what we deem currently to be a positive effect on climate change, i.e., stopping climate change. Is there an unintended consequence in the greater universe if we were to actually achieve our goal?
Stopping climate change.
Mm.
Well, that's interesting. There are, um, you know, when you're thinking about carbon removals, and I mean, obviously, we live in a capitalist society, and so everything ultimately comes down to money. So people are only going to remove carbon from the atmosphere if it pays, and therefore you have to have a way of demonstrating how much carbon you've taken out of the atmosphere. And we don't have a control Earth to compare to know what the true impact of any of our actions are. So there's a really interesting and fundamental question about what the baseline is, or the counterfactual that you use to calculate how much CO2 you've taken out of the atmosphere. And um,
Mm.
so, yeah, there are huge unknowns, and we have to do our best to mitigate against the unintended consequences, and find our way through and make it work on an economic level as well as an environmental one.
Indeed. Well, I'll certainly watch on with interest, and live on with interest. And I suppose it will be for you at least, and many other people, the work of a lifetime. Um,
Yeah.
so now, look, I could probably talk to you for a long time because I feel like we've only actually scratched the surface, but nevertheless, we have come close to the end. So before we finish, I just want to ask you one small question. Um, what are your hopes? That's what I said I was going to ask you. What are your hopes for the future of science? And that is what I ask. But sometimes I ask it in a slightly different way, which is if you could change one thing. And I slightly feel like that would be more appropriate in this case. If you could change one thing about the scientific landscape, what would it be? No pun intended.
I I would like to see science be less apart from society. So, we were saying as humans, we're part of the environment, but as scientists, we're part of society. And I think there's on both sides, there is a mindset of, scientists, or science is different or apart from regular existence, and scientists are somehow a different breed. And I think that feeds into the issues around misinformation and mistrust of experts, and lots of the things that I think are probably the biggest challenge to us overcoming or surviving the climate and biodiversity crises is, everybody needs to get on the same page with fixing the problems.
Mm.
And I think scientists being humans is a really important part of that. And I suppose podcasts like this are doing a great job of, or hopefully doing a great job of solving some of that. But I think it's a big challenge, a really big challenge for society to trust its experts
Mm.
and realize that, everybody can be an expert. They just have to work at it.
That's true. We have become quite fragmented, and a bit of unity would be quite nice to be going on.
Mm.
Martin, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Did you enjoy that episode of Lab Matters? If you did, please do send it to the people that you think will enjoy it the most.